the most obvious basic is the position of the car on the track. You start off wide and you go in and you clip your apex and you drift out wide and you go, yeah, well, what's complicated about that? But when you look at it, people don't use every inch of the track. They think they are, but they're looking at the apex. They're not looking at the left-hand side of the track. So they'll leave half a meter sometimes. And those are the basics. And that's what I found useful.
Welcome to the Your Data Driven podcast. If you like this podcast, be sure to visit our website at yourdatadriven.com for more useful help and advice on setting up your race car, mastering data analysis, and driving faster. Welcome to episode 47. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Julian Thomas to the show, a man who's combined a passion for racing with his expertise in data analytics, creating a career that's as thrilling as it is insightful. From his unique journey into motorsports to inventing the revolutionary VBox, Julian's got plenty of wisdom to share on both how to go faster on track and how to get the most out of his technology. So, as ever, grab a pen, grab a coffee, sit back, and let's enjoy what Julian has to say. Welcome, Julian.
Thank you. Yes, good to be here.
I'm really excited about this show. It's been a long time coming. We were just talking off air beforehand. Like we were trying to organise a few different times. And it's absolutely, it's one of my favourite subjects, the world of data and analytics. It's clearly one of yours.
Sure. 100%.
What we're trying to do with every show, my challenge to my guests is to say, look, let's work towards maybe one or two takeaways that people listening can
so I've got to cut it down to one or two.
Well, I mean, let's start with that, one or two.
Okay.
And
pick my favourite.
So there's one or two things that people can go away and think about and do that they may not have done before, particularly with your favourite subject, but also outside of that as well, because you have also, I want to hear about your background, but from what I know about you kind of came to racing as a driver a little bit later, perhaps, than
yes, definitely
kind of thing. And so that will be really fascinating to hear about how you've gone from pretty much starting and then done very well. So I imagine a lot of people will be able to relate to your story and how you've applied all this sort of technology, but also learned how to drive and done coaching and or had coaching and all these different things.
Yes,
as a whole.
Okay.
So how does that sound? Does that sound like a bit of
it sounds good.
A challenge, right? So tell us a bit about yourself. So, clearly the boss of the famous
Race Logic.
Race Logic.
Yeah.
So how did that start? How did we all get going with all that?
Okay, well, I tried to go racing when I was 22, and I bought an old classic Formula Ford, a Royale RP33M. I bought a 50-50 with a friend of mine, and we went, did a few test days. Then we entered a race, and it was really jumping in the deep end. We had no idea what we were doing. I ended up, I think I qualified second to last. I managed on the last lap, as the leaders passed me, one went left of me, one went to the right of me. I only saw one of them, so I turned into the other one, took him out, ended up in the barriers. And I thought, motor racing takes money and skill, and at the time I had neither. So I kind of put it on a back burner. But I've been into cars and racing since age of about 6, I think. My dad and I used to go to Silverstone and watch the cars go around, club race meetings, all kinds. And when I started Race Logic, I wanted to work in the motor racing industry. So I started electronics business because that's my background and training. I'm a physicist in electronics at university. And I had a few contacts in the industry. I worked for Superchips, the company that hacked engine management systems. I worked for them for 3 years. I was their chief hacker. Came across a few racing teams and worked with a few racing teams, and this is what I want to get into. So I started off selling traction control systems, gearbox control systems, diff control systems. All of that technology was just coming out when I started my company. And I thought, this is perfect timing. So I designed some systems, and they got promptly banned in all levels of motorsport. So my business plan was suddenly completely wrecked because I couldn't sell what I'd developed to the racing world. So
When you say you developed it, I mean,
Yeah.
I've got some very minor experience in this world, and I know it's not an overnight process. So
No, I thought it was at first.
Time to get
Yes.
to the right wrench.
Yes, I did.
Sorry, we don't like that.
Yeah, absolutely. The traction control system, it took me about two and a half years to develop, all on my own. I was working for myself, and it sold well into club motorsport in the end. It was meant to be for professional motorsport, but that's all been banned, and they're just about coming back now. But at the time, it sort of pulled the rug up underneath me. But I pivoted into the automotive world. We began selling that to the mainstream manufacturers for their road cars, which actually was more lucrative. So it was a really good thing that I didn't get too heavily involved in racing right at the beginning, because I wouldn't have been able to afford to go racing later, I can tell you that. And then later on, once Race Logic did once Race Logic started to do well and had chances and availability to go racing, I did some testing and training in go-karts, best place for it, absolutely. And unfortunately or fortunately, the guy I did the go-karting with, super talented, didn't realise at the time, he beat me every single time, and happened to beat everybody else as well that he ever raced against. So I kind of picked a good partner and a bad partner. So I knew instantly that I had to learn. And back then there weren't any tools for doing this. So I invented one. I made up the very first VBox and put it on a go-kart. And because I'd asked this guy, how do you drive so fast? No idea. Just push the pedal, do this, whatever. Don't know.
Well, this is the thing. You do tend to get quite flippant answers, don't you, when you ask?
You do.
Half the time, I always think half the time, they don't want to tell you something because they're worried, and then the other half of the time they don't actually know.
Genuinely don't know. I know, it's amazing. There's different approaches to racing, which is fabulous, and mine obviously is extremely analytical and heavy thinking, and there's others that just do it by the seat of their pants, and they can be just as fast. Not surprisingly, it's an innate skill, but they're the people you can really learn from. So that's kind of what I've done. So I invented this VBox, put it on the go-kart and said, do you realise you're doing this? Am I? Yeah. And did you realise you're doing that? No, you have no idea who was doing it, but I picked up those skills and almost could go as quick as him, but still not quite.
What kind of things were you measuring?
Measuring
There's
speed.
not a lot of space on a car, is there?
There isn't. No, it was speed and throttle position and braking, and that was it.
What if you didn't have to rely on paddock folklore anymore? Get ahead of the curve. My weekly motorsports wisdom on driving, data and setup that you can read in just 5 minutes, completely free. Join thousands of dedicated racing and track drivers getting one article every Thursday. If you're enjoying this podcast, then Ahead of the Curve is for you. Subscribers are the very first to know about new episodes. Get deeper discussions, expert interviews and behind the scenes racing stories. Head over to yourdatadriven.com and sign up for free today. Ahead of the Curve, where racing knowledge meets your inbox. And remember, you can also subscribe to the Your Data Driven podcast on any of your favourite podcast platforms.
So from those traces, you can get 80-90% of it from those. You don't have to have lots and lots of channels of data. You can get an awful lot just from speed. Really, it's quite surprising. And then I began to go racing, and again on a race car, there wasn't. I wanted to have a video, and I wanted to have data as well, so I could see what I was doing, what the car was doing, and there wasn't. You could take a video, and you could take your data, and you could overlay the two in some fussy software that was difficult to use. So I thought, well, there's got to be a market for one that does both. So that's how the VBox came about.
It's always a little bit of a danger as well, isn't it? If someone with your background, like, because it's like, oh well, obviously I could just put that together. And other people be put off by I wouldn't know where to start. But almost a danger for you is that, like, well, I do actually know how to do this. So, but you don't have another traction control moment, do you? So you're kind of like you're having to make it a way up the decision about whether you're doing.
Yeah. Absolutely. The first few years, it was difficult to sell because people didn't really understand it. It's never been done before. They didn't get it. But once it began to get traction, and once I'd used it a number of times and thought, what are the salient points? What are the most important things that the driver, as a driver, needs to know? And what doesn't he need to know? So I sort of try to keep it really, really super simple and just drill it down to the basics, because it's the basics where the real detail actually belongs.
Well, that's a thing you hear all the time. Because I've worked in motorsport, but also Olympic sport, and I'm working with these professional sports team, multi-gold medal winning people, and they're always the difference that they just do the basics better. They just do the basics well, but no one always tells you what the basics are. What are the basics?
Yeah, come on. Well, run fast, drive fast, obvious, isn't it?
This is it. Well, I don't use the brake quite as much. It's like, that doesn't help me.
No. No, I mean, the most obvious basic is the position of the car on the track. You say you start off wide and you go in and you clip your apex and you drift out wide and you go, yeah, well, what's complicated about that? But when you look at it, people don't use every inch of the track. They think they are, but they're looking at the apex. They're not looking at the left-hand side of the track. So they'll leave half a meter sometimes. And those are the basics. And that's what I found useful, because driving around a track, go-kart track, whatever, race track, it's expensive and time-consuming. You can actually learn a lot of these in your road car. And I've done that quite a bit where, say, with track positioning, whenever I come to a corner, I'll be making sure that I can feel my tyres on the white line or the rumble strips or whatever just on the road, and make sure as you clip the apex, you spot a cat's eye and you go, right, I'm going to clip that with my front right. And if you don't, you know that you've misjudged the width of your car.
So when you say you mean road car on the
road
highway, obviously
driving at normal speeds, because you don't have to do this kind of stuff fast at all. It's just about, and it's about the they say muscle memory, isn't it? So it's about, now when I look at a corner, I'm automatically shifting my body to the left and trying to feel the grass, because that's what you do in a race car. You want to feel, and you're right on the edge of the track. And you've got to know where that limit is. And the only way to do it is to practice. And a road car is a fantastic place to practice. As long as there's not a curve on the left-hand side, then it gets a bit expensive, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. There's all the health and safety benefit, flag warning signs.
Sure.
People listening are going to be sensible enough for that. I mean, one of the other things, you talk about positioning, and there are other brands of data logger available and such like, but one of the things that, when the ones that don't integrate with the video, saying just relying on GPS, it's one of the things that you kind of always miss, is that, like, where were you on the track?
Yeah,
and that's exactly where the video really wins hands down, in terms of that last few centimeters. Really, you can see, like, are you on using the track or not?
Yeah, I mean. Of course, I push our very latest product, which is accurate to a centimetre, that's coming out very soon. So that's really good. That's really good for track positioning. But as you say, in reality, the video tells you everything, because you can see where the white line is. You can see how much you missed it by, or how much you overcooked it by. So video it gives a whole new dimension to the data, especially if it's tightly synchronized. So you can see very much keyed in with the data is exactly where you are.
We're gonna, what was going to happen on this? You and I, we're going to struggle not to dive into the data.
Sure. Yeah. So going back. Going back. So then, So I did a bit of go-karting. Then I looked around and I tried a few things. I met a fantastic driving instructor called Nigel Greensall, and I'd watched him race, so I knew him. And he was using a VBox, and he said, "Why haven't you ever raced?" And I went, "Well, I want to, but at the moment I don't know how to get into it." He goes, let me look into it. So we tried a number of different things. We tried radicals.
That is a thing. That is a thing for people listening, actually, is that even if you do track days or these kind of things, there's not an obvious route. It's like, even though you say, actually, yes, I'm going to commit to this, but where do I start?
Yes, exactly.
It's very difficult. And certainly I've had this, my own experience. trying to do that. And it's just like, if it wasn't for my friend who took me to, well, just get a car like mine, and we can, come under my tent, and I'll help you out to start.
Yeah.
I would have probably never gone racing. And so it's having those relationships to get you going. You're lucky to have that. So you looked at a few different,
I tried different things. Yeah. I mean, I'd always done track days in my catering. So I did a catering race. Engine blew up. So I thought, I don't want something with a big, powerful, high revving, expensive engine. Took that one off the list for now. I tried slicks and wings with a Radical. Didn't really enjoy that. It was just a bit planted for me. I like a car that's moving all over the place, and you feel, because back in the day when I used to watch my heroes racing, the cars were all sliding and moving around, and you look at it and you go, I couldn't do that. So that's what I wanted to try and emulate. I then Nigel introduced me to Fun Cup, and I looked at the Beetle-shaped fiberglass thing with a 1.8 litre engine. I was like, no, I'm not going to go in that. And he said, just drive it, just spend a day in it, see what you think. At the end of the day, I was totally hooked. It's just it's a single seater with a fiberglass body on. I
was going to say, you sit in the middle, don't you? So
you do.
People are not familiar with the Fun Cup. It's a Beetle, Volkswagen Beetle shaped silhouette type car, but basically with a big wing on the back. You sit in the middle.
That's right. And they're sequential gear change. You use left foot braking, rear engine, and mid-engined. You do like minimum 3 hours, often 6-hour races with two of your mates, pit stops, fuel strategy, everything. But everyone has the same tires, suspension, brakes, engine, everything is stock. So you can tweak the suspension a little bit, but to be honest, it doesn't make a lot of difference. So it's all about the driving. And that's where I did 5 seasons of Fun Cup, if not 6 seasons of Fun Cup, where you're doing, you will spend 2, 3, 4 hours in the car at a weekend. So you get loads of seat time.
Well, I was going to say, that's the other thing about it. It's an endurance series. And in comparison to maybe some of the sprint series that people are used to, where you sort of get 10 or 15 minutes, whatever, it's all quite intensive. The endurance racing, you get so much more time in the car, and you're also getting that camaraderie again with your friends, because you're sharing the car.
Exactly.
And in your case, you've probably got another data trace to look at.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You don't get in my car unless you can help out with the data. The 2 guys I go racing with a lot, or used to in Fun Cup, one of them is the chief aerodynamicist at the Andretti Formula One startup, and the other is the control systems lead at Red Bull. So we're all very much geeky, data-driven engineers. So that works really well. So I cut my teeth in Fun Cup. Nigel was my teammate for many years, and we won the championship 4 times, in those 6 years. So that was pretty good going, and that was down to a lot of homework with the VBox, and I'd actually develop and hone the VBox during these race weekends. So next time I could get even more from it, and with the feedback on the lap time.
That's such a big thing, isn't it? Again, I've just done some work recently on a tyre course, of all things.
Right.
There's a spreadsheet that I developed to go with it, which is like a run sheet, like where you write all your numbers in. But then I thought, I want to do something maths with those numbers, and so I made it into the smart run sheet. But basically, the first iteration of that was great when I was sitting here in the studio working on it. But then you go to the track, and it's I can't use it. It's right, to be mucking around. So basically, you end up honing this thing over time and going
optimizing.
And one of the lovely things about VBox, actually, I'd say. And I've said this for the first time I used it, actually, is how fast it is to go from the cars coming in to using thing, particularly
so important.
And it just makes it that much more accessible.
Yeah. Some drivers have quite a short attention span, so you've got to hit them with the information within 5 minutes of getting out the car, or they're off somewhere talking about tires and suspension settings and how they almost set the fastest lap of testing and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So you were actually able to hone the product through and cut
through racing, and that's when I developed the Delta, the lap display we do, the VBox OLED display, because that shows a running delta of your difference between your current lap and your previous fastest lap, and that people become addicted to it. I've heard of people saying that they just they look at it on the entrance of the corner, at the apex, and on the exit, and it can be dangerous though, as I found out to my cost. As it was back out of lockdown, so I hadn't raced for 18 months or whatever on a track, and I was in my big Ford Falcon, big V8 thing I've got that's got no brakes and too much power, and I was at the Brands Indy circuit, and I'd forgotten just how quick it was. I mean, probably doing 140 on the start finish line, and I was like, oh, that was a good lap. I looked at it. I was like, yeah, minus, that's it. And as I looked up, I thought, hold on, I've just missed my braking point, and sailed off the track into the barrier, bit of damage. But it was the old thing. Yeah, you got to look at it after the corner, not just before the corner. Yeah. So it can be dangerous. This driver distraction can be bad, but.
Well, it's having that visibility of your lap time delta, and again, for people, I would imagine most people listening are familiar with it, but if you're not, this gives you a running prediction in effect of what you're doing compared to your best, and up or down, and it's to within less than a tenth of a second, isn't it? And you can
about 2 or 3 hundredths. It's accurate.
And you can see what's nice is that particularly when you're analysing the data as well afterwards, when there's an inflection point, so you go from you're either gaining or losing at some point.
Yeah.
You go through a corner, you experiment, and you look down and think, yeah, that worked.
Exactly.
Or unfortunately, it didn't, and then it didn't. You've got to look at it for the next straight. All the way down.
Oh, I've only lost a tenth. You think as you exit that corner, and then you watch it 2 tenths, 3 tenths, 4 tenths, 5 tenths. By the end of the straight, it's a second. So oh yeah, it's a really because human beings improve with feedback. So it's really important to give very timely, quick feedback. With that display, rather than waiting once a lap to get a lap time. Oh, I've knocked a second off. How did I do that? No idea. You can tell, on the exit of a corner, whether you've gained or lost. And also you can sometimes gain massively into a corner by carrying loads of speed, and then you're sort of half a second up at the apex, think, fantastic. But then you lost it all because of your exit speed. So it gives you really good instant feedback.
I think back in the day, I heard a story about Michael Schumacher, who I think Michael Schumacher was quite nerdy as well with his data. And
he was, yes, that's what I heard.
And the story goes that he was at Benetton, and he had 2 little speed. I'm putting my hands up, no one can see it. 2 little screens you'd have put up on the dash, and one of them gave him his speed on the way in. I guess it must be a V.
Okay.
And then the other gave him his speed on the way out, and I think they did something with lateral acceleration or whatever. But it did is it just pinged up, and so he would just go through the corner. And it just made me think when you said, look after at the end of the corner.
Yes.
There was no point in looking at this little screen until he was straightened up again.
Sure.
Because that was when the number would come up. And he would just incrementally experiment and play with all these different things.
Yeah.
Can I get an extra mile an hour?
Yeah.
For the corner exit. And it's like, genius,
Yeah. Because you can fill only a certain amount through your bum.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you can think, that was a really good lap. It was a second a lap slower than you've been before. So it's really good to get instant feedback on that. And also it keeps, in an endurance race, it keeps you on your toes, because you get tired in the car, and when you're tired, you don't quite put so much effort in. So you might brake just a fraction earlier because my legs getting a bit tired. And you start doing that subconsciously, but you can see it instantly if you got feedback like that.
Yeah, so it gives you a bit of a wake-up call to sort of...
It does, yes. Oh, hold on. Yeah, I should concentrate. Because I found that the more I concentrate, the faster I go.
Okay.
I really have to concentrate hard to put a really quick lap in. And I don't understand these drivers that can be sat there on the radio chatting away, setting fastest laps. It's like, no, sorry, that's not me. I've got to use 100% of my brain to drive quickly.
Yeah, sort of Alonso saying, "Oh yeah, that was a nice
Exactly.
overtake, Lance." You know,
Yeah.
how are you How are you doing?
Yeah, he's using 40% of his brain to drive the car, whereas I'm using probably 97%.
But
in fact, it's the first time I realised that that's how I was wired was in the Fun Cup race, and with the Fun Cup they've got a really good system where the race director can talk to everyone on their radio. So if you got the car pit to car radio, but the race director blasts across everybody, so he'll tell you red flag, yellow flag, penalties, that kind of safety car, all that kind of stuff, which is brilliant because everyone reacts pretty much at the same time. But the first time it was at Snetterton that I was in a race and he talked to me. I drove clean off the track. I talked to everybody. I drove clean off the track because it made me jump because someone was talking to me when I was trying to concentrate, and B, in my head I was like, what did he say? Was that to do with me? By which time I've missed my braking point and I'm scooting across the grass. So I learned to background listen to what they've said and don't process it until I was coming out the corner, and then go, right, did he say car 251? No, I don't think he did. No, I'm good. Yeah.
The radio, pit-to-car radio, again, for people listening that may not be familiar, but in the UK, that's not that common in motorsport. But in other countries, it is. So particularly in North America, everyone seems to have a radio. They're all chatting to each other. I've been coaching a guy over in the States, and I was watching the race, and I was watching, his competitors going round. There's like this car's coming right up, perfect overtake. And number one, they do the bump drafting thing, which again is not
terrifying.
Well, it's completely terrifying, but particularly that real car, which these guys are in, which we are not allowed to do over here. And I was like, oh, that guy's got a great run. And then he just sat there. I'm like, what's going on there? And then just right at the right moment, just into the breaking point, they just gapped each other. And oh no, that's father and son. They're chatting to each other on the radio, and they're just trying to help each other in qualifying. I'm like, oh, okay.
Interesting. It's another dimension.
That's another dimension. Yeah. Practice that one as well.
Yeah. Don't think I could cope with that. I'm not very good on a radio, race radio. You don't get much from me apart from a yes or a no, and that's about it.
So where did you go after Fun Cup?
I then bought a Jaguar E-Type because I'd seen a lot of the classic racing, and the way the cars moved around under braking and cornering and accelerating. In fact, where they just moved around full stop all the time. I thought, I'm going to have some of that. And also aesthetically, I thought the Jaguar, this is a low drag Jaguar, so it's absolutely beautiful. And I was like, I want to race this because it looks really, it was kind of a reaction to driving around in a plastic bodied VW Beetle. And I loved Fun Cup and I did it for years. But when everyone said, oh, you go racing, what do you race? And I showed them the picture of it, you could see their face was, oh, that's nice. So I wanted something where people went, oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
So it was, quite shallow. But
would you say you kind of cut your teeth in
definitely.
The Fun Cup?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
And so you didn't, because the temptation is so much. And if you are in a position where you can go racing in something nice, the temptation is just to go, well, I should go and do something with a nice paddock and everything and all that. But for you as a driver, I always worry about that. I always think,
me too.
Or in the like in an MX-5 or Miata or whatever they call them, or just something that's a bit slower and everyone's a bit closer together, a bit more competitive.
It means you've got to be on your game. And it's seat time at the end of the day, unless you're naturally gifted and you can get in the car and instantly you're on the base, which there are a few people like that, but the majority are like me. You have to work at it. And in the Fun Cup, you get your seat time and you get your racecraft, which is super critical. Once you've learned to go quick around a track, you've then got to learn to go quick amongst traffic and how to deal with it. And in the Fun Cup, because it's all about the slipstream and they're all the same, you have to work. You might spend 20 minutes overtaking one guy. You might be 4/10 quicker than him, but it takes you 20 minutes to get past. And you learn from that. And it's about, you can't make any mistakes. You've got to be so precise and rhythmic with your driving. Otherwise, you get a gap of 2 or 3 seconds. It'd take you like 10 laps to catch up again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's easy to lose that.
Yeah, it is very easy. Yeah. So yeah, definitely cut my teeth there, and that gave me the grounding to drive the other cars that I've driven.
And so you've got this beautiful car.
Yeah.
So did it live up to the expectation? Because worry is always is never meet your sort of your idols and all that. Isn't it? Was it fun as you thought?
Oh, it's just stunning car, just beautiful to drive. The engine noise, and the fact of your double declutching, heel and towing, and the proper gearbox. And the car slides around, you hit the brakes and it starts to slide. You turn into the corner, it slides. You power out, it slides. I got out the car, and it was the first time I'd driven a classic. And I said to Jeremy Welch, who built it for me, I said, "Oh, there's something wrong with this. It's like trying to kill me all the time." He goes, "Yep, get back in. That's normal. Off you go." So I was like, "Oh, okay." So yeah, it took me a little while to get my head around it. And you see these cars out on the track, and you don't realise how hard work it is driving these things, because they are just constantly trying to spin and go sideways, and it's great. You really the more effort you put in, the more you get out. And I've bought other cars since then, and one of my other cars is a Daytona Cobra, the replica, of course, because I haven't got 8 million lying around.
It's going really well at Race Logic,
but not that well. Yes, not million brand new, not a genuine Daytona. Well, and that car is very heavy to drive. And if you want to drive at 9/10, it takes about 50% of the effort to drive at 10 of what it takes to drive at 10/10. I can do, like in qualifying, if I'm on it for like 5 laps, I'm physically shattered because it's just your work rate doubles. And I love that, because it's the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. And it adds a whole new element to it as well, by being so difficult to drive.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit about the data side of life. So
yeah,
I can't resist it any longer.
Let's dive in. Yeah.
I mean, well, the interesting thing as well is that you've got data spread across a whole range of vehicles, from karts to the Fun Cup to these historic cars. Yeah. That all kind of require a different style. Intrinsically they need something different to go quicker. It's probably hard one to start with, but how do you sort of use the data to help you with that, or what is it? Where do you start when you?
Where do I start? Okay, my starting point is always braking points.
Is it?
Yeah, that's the one. If I'm learning a new track, I want to know my braking point, because until you know your braking point, you can't get the maximum out of it, I think. And it's interesting, because I've talked to a number of other drivers in the paddock over the years and worked with them. And some of them you say to, like a good friend of mine, Martin Stretton, very, very established historic racer, been racing 25 years or something, won everything, superb, drives historic Formula One cars a lot. And I have a good old chat with him because he's very analytical. And I said, "Oh, where's your braking point for this corner?" Because we were both driving Jaguars. And he goes, "Well, it's when I press the brake." I said, "Yeah, but where is that?" He says, "I couldn't tell you." "What, you're holding back?" No, I just brake at the right point. I don't have a physical braking point. I was like, mind blown, because I have to have like my blade of grass, my mark on the barrier, whatever, to get my braking point right. Because I think from your braking point, that dictates everything else around the corner. If you're too early, you're going in too slow, you lose a chunk of time. You're too late, you're going in too fast, you lose a chunk of time. So you've got to absolutely optimize that braking points. That's my first thing. And I look at that in the data as well, because you can see there's you'll naturally lift off the brake a bit if you've braked too early. So you can see, have I hit the brake and I am hard on the brake, pulling at least 0.9 G or whatever it is, all the way until I start to turn into the corner. And 9 times out of 10, the answer is no, I'm not. And you can brake a little bit later. So that's the first thing that I look for. Aside on the braking points, don't ever use a shadow as a braking point.
Well, you were going to use the umbrella one there, where they move a bit further along so they get a bit. Yeah. It's like, hang on, no.
I was getting quicker and quicker into the Knickerbrook chicane at Alton Park, and every time I was going in, I was going, "Oh, it's getting a bit sketchy, this." And then finally, on one lap, I absolutely completely overshot the chicane. I was like, what? Don't know what happened there. Come back round the next lap, did the same thing. I was like, oh, I know what it is. That mark's missing. And it was a shadow of a tree. So this shadow had been getting later and later into my braking zone until it disappeared completely as the sun went down. So I've learned not to use a shadow as your braking point.
I think that
but I look for anything.
For anyone listening, actually.
Yeah.
We can almost just wrap it up here, can we? I mean, that's,
don't use a shadow. Yeah.
But you would do that. I can see that. It change of colour on the tarmac, isn't it? So
I didn't realise.
Didn't really think of it as a shadow.
No. So I learned a lesson that day, definitely. But I do absolutely, I have to have a physical marker of some kind. And there's a couple of corners where there aren't any, and I find them always quite tricky.
Yeah, it's every time it's a bit of a new adventure when you approach a corner like that, where there may be a bit of a blind crest, or there's nothing really around to. I mean, there's a couple of tips I've picked up from talking to people on the show and such like as. So my friend Ross Bentley, he has a concept.
I love his books. I've read all of his books.
Have you?
Yeah, they're so good.
He's actually he's joining me on the time course for this one. Actually, it's going to be really good.
Is it Ross that's written the books, or am I thinking of
no, it's Ross. He wrote all the
definitely
books. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, definitely read all of those.
Sort of a bit of a legend.
He is
absolutely lovely guy and a super coach. And his thing with the sort of this corner entry phase is he talks about a throttle on point. So rather than a braking point, you talk about like at what point do you come off full throttle as a point?
Okay.
Right. So it's a slightly different.
Turns it on its head.
Because quite often when drivers are new, and you'll have seen this, they kind of roll off the throttle and then roll onto the brakes.
Yes.
And you want it to be more sort of digital. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other thing he talks about is like the end of braking. So
right. Oh yeah, that's critical.
So where's that point? If you're going to point pick that one, where do you want to be off the brakes?
Yes.
Not necessarily back on the throttle, but just off the brakes.
Off the brakes. And one thing I've found that's worth a lot of time, especially in a historic car where you've got a H pattern gearbox, so you have to dip the clutch between and blip the throttle. Is I used to, because when I raced with like pros in my historic cars, they could seem to brake a little bit later than me. And if I braked at their point, I couldn't make the corner. So I looked at the data, and you look at the longitudinal G, and you see that you hit the brake first and 0.9 G, solid, lovely. And then you twist your foot across the brake pedal to blip the throttle, and it pops up to 0.4 G, and then back down to 0.8, 0.9 G again. And that little blip that you can see, you can't feel it in the car because you're moving your foot around. But that could change your braking distance by 3 or 4 meters. You can brake a little bit later because you're more consistent on the brakes. And that's a difficult one to learn and to practice. And again, I practice it on the road. I just sort of brake hard for a corner and try to heel and toe whilst not letting up the pressure on the brake. And even the pros, they can't quite manage to maintain the same brake pressure. And I've watched it and I've looked at it. They even come off a little bit. So it's a real skill.
The heel and toe for sure is such a skill. And then, like you say, because you're quite busy doing that, you don't really realize that you're coming off the brakes, but you can see it in the data really clearly that, you know,
super clear.
It just pops up.
It pops up. Yeah. It gives you, it's a W shape. And you want to make it a U shape.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's again, so the braking phase is
super important.
It's totally defined by that. I had some advice before where they sort of said, like, if you can't do it, just abandon the
gear change.
Abandon or leave it a bit late. Either leave it later or abandon the blip if you depending on, you know, you don't want to damage your car or whatever.
No, or into the corner backwards.
Or into the corner backwards, because obviously the whole idea is that you're trying to balance the whole thing, and you're not shocking those tires at the back.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at like the speed trace, you're looking at braking points, you're looking at this longitudinal acceleration, there's already quite a lot of things like.
There is. Yeah, it's basically longitudinal acceleration. That gives you most things for your braking. It's you look at your video and you see, am I braking at the right point? And then you look at the longitudinal trace and say, am I braking hard enough throughout the entire phase of the braking event? So it's one line that you look at and you can see very quickly whether it has gone to, because it depending on the tyre, downforce, whatever. But say in a historic car, 0.91 G is about the most you can squeeze from it. And it's really easy to brake at 0.8 G. It's really tricky to brake absolutely on the limit all the time throughout the entire phase of the braking. So it's a good reminder, because in some corners you think you're braking really hard, but then you look at the data again, no, I'm not actually. There's a little bit more left. And you can't feel it in the car, but you can see it in the data.
So if someone was like thinking about data and they're like thinking, I'm not sure, like I'm listening to us chat away, and these guys are sold. There must be something in it. I'm still not sure. Racing is expensive enough, kind of thing. Do I really need? Am I really going to benefit from this? And maybe, they're not comfortable on the technology side of things. And stuff like that. What kind of things would you say to someone like that? Like, would you say like just give it a go, or would say don't bother, or
try? If you want to use a driver coach, and that's the best way to go quickly in the fastest possible time, it costs a little bit more money, but pick a driver coach that is really happy with using data, because then they can pinpoint these things for you, and then you can learn about them, and then you'll see whether they're useful or not, because they'll go quicker than you, and they'll be having to explain what they're doing. And the only way you can do that, unless you're sat alongside them, is through the data.
Yeah. Okay. And what if, so can you use data if you don't have like someone else sitting in your car, if you just have you driving around, how do you, you look for clues, like you look for your braking zone. So look at the braking point. Are you using full longitudinal G all the time up to the point when you turn in? And then when the next crucial phase, which is, and this bit, I think, is the thing that takes years to master and has the biggest effect, is the blend from the braking to the turning of the wheel. And that, and I think Ross Bentley goes into great detail about this, about how you come up. And he described something which I've loved ever since. And it's, imagine there's a string that's on the steering wheel connected to the brake. And as you turn your wheel, it pulls the brake pedal up. He says that's what you want to be doing. You don't want to come off the brake and then turn, and you don't want to keep the brake on and turn. So there's a blend, and it's that beautiful balance between the two that makes the biggest difference. And you can look at the data, because there's we produce a channel, and it's pretty standard, what I call a combo G, and it's a combination of lateral and longitudinal, so braking forces, cornering forces. But to simplify it, you get this line, and it goes up when you start braking, and it also stays up when you start cornering. But you can't let it dip in between, because that's lap time you're missing. So again, it should look like an N, but it often looks like an M. And it's that transition from braking to turning that you've got to fill in that gap. So you can look at your own data and go, is my braking, is that a nice N shape, or is it a M shape? And then look at the combination of the two and make sure there's no dip in that either. And if you're doing that, then you've definitely progressed, because I can guarantee there will be a gap, because even the very best drivers, there's a little gap, and it's just about minimizing that. But you can't feel it in the car. You can only see it. And the tire is capable of having a nice smooth transition between the two. So if you've got a little gap in between, you're leaving lap time on the table. Yeah, and if there's any sort of driver coaches out there listening as well, for me, that's the go-to channel. You look at the speed trace and such, like orientate yourself, but then that sort of G sum or vector G, or what is it with this industry? And like everyone calling the same something different. Yeah,
everyone else is wrong. It's a combination G, isn't it? Obviously, it's a combination of two G. So. In scientifically, it's vector. It's a vector, which is probably a good good engineering term. But everyone calls it different.
It's the same with the Delta T or the lap Delta or time slip or whatever. There's all things for it. It's just like,
it's all the same thing.
It's all the same thing.
Well, it is, as long as it's based on position and not distance.
Well, I was literally teeing you up for that one.
Nice one, yeah.
Because what you guys do that no one else does, as far as I'm aware, is align the data more accurately around the track. So, do you want to tell us a bit about how you do that? Because that's not as obvious as...
No, it's not. It's a subtle but really, really important. Traditionally, you would use the lap distance to compare two laps together. So you'd have your speed trace and your G trace, and you need to overlay them.
I'm just going to flag traditionally, as in how everyone else on the planet, apart from you guys.
Yeah, until we enter the market,
still current.
And that works if you follow exactly the same line on every single lap. That's absolutely fine. It's a legitimate way to do it. But unless you're on the track on your own and you're super fast and very, very, very accurate, you can't do that. So your lap distance will change. I've worked with the best drivers, and they're like 8-9 meters difference on a lap round, say, Silverstone, and round the Nordschleife. They can be 30-50 meters different. So if you're using distance to reference your losses or your gains, and you're 5 meters out, that's the difference between the apex and the exit. So you can't really do that and get an accurate output. So what we do is we reference against GPS position, and GPS position allows you to align the apexes and the entrances and the corner exits all together. So you get very, very good correlation between two different laps, because the GPS is now accurate. Standard GPS we sell is accurate for about a meter, and if you're traveling at 30 meters per second, that's a 30th of a second accuracy, which is pretty good.
Yeah, that's absolutely great. And so how do you? So say because what it also allows you to do is if you have a moment.
when you have a moment.
So I'm going to say, when you have a moment.
Yeah.
It means that and then in your enthusiasm to catch up, you set blistering, a blistering last sector, for example. Yeah. It means you can still use that last sector to compare against the rest of what you've done.
Absolutely. Yeah, because it will still be accurate. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you, and some systems would use a wheel speed sensor to measure the distance. And if you've locked a wheel or spun a wheel, then that's inaccurate as well. There's ways to mitigate that, but it's never as good as using pure GPS.
Yeah, I'm surprised more people don't use your.
It's difficult. It's a lot of maths.
This
took us a while. Yeah, it took us a while to get a head around it. And we're GPS experts. That's what we supply on a day-to-day basis. So we understand all the accuracies and the way to get the best out of it. So it for us, it was fairly straightforward, but it's not a simple thing. And also it takes a lot of processing. You can't do it on a cheap little processor. It has to be fairly powerful.
Yeah. But you've obviously prioritized it and gone, now this is important. So we're
super important. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just looking at the time and think, oh my God, where's it? Gosh. Where's it gone? It's like, so
we haven't even got to the apex yet.
No, we haven't actually got to the apex, have we? This is the irony of this topic. I mean, we could chat all day. I know we could, and but we did. At least we got to your historics.
Yes. So I've got a number of them. I wrote a list just to remind myself, and these are the ones I've told my wife about. So Jaguar E-Type.
This is a public list.
So, yes. I got a Cobra Daytona, Ford Cobra Daytona, big V8 thing, fantastic. Ford Falcon, that's a V8, no grip, big engine, big massive car, hilarious, good fun that is. A Chevron B8, which is an old 1968 single-seater closed roof British sports car, beautiful car, and that's got a 2-litre engine. Super lightweight. It's like a single seater with a fiberglass roof on it, basically. And my final car I bought was a Sierra Cosworth RS500, and it was an old British touring car. Andy Rousey's, he shared it with Guy Smith. Guy Edwards during. Guy Smith's a bit younger than Guy Edwards would be. He shared it in the 1989 British Touring Car Championship. So that's quite a famous car.
Is that the Caliber one?
That's the Caliber car. Yeah. I love that car. It's a beast. So fast. It's ridiculous. I love it.
Well, other than being completely jealous of your car collection, what one or two things, is there one thing you can leave people with or think about when, like, is it wrapping all this up and trying to summarize where you've come as a because you're an amateur driver, obviously, successfully, and bought into the whole analytics and the data, but you've made it work for you as an amateur driver. Yes, you're looking for that kind of support, but also, if someone's listening and thinking, I'm still not sure, or I just want to give that a go, or I did, okay, I might get a coach, I'm not sure about that either. How would you sort of sum up your experiences with it, sort of pros and cons a little bit on, so that we can go and think, actually, I'm in a better position to make a decision on that kind of thing.
Yeah, it depends what you want to get out of racing. I'm supremely competitive and always have been. So I want to be at the front and I want to be winning. And, when I first started, I wasn't. And now I've won 7 championships in 5 different cars because I wanted to win. I wanted to be up in the top step. I wanted to be one of the fastest drivers on the grid. And it's to do that is hard work and dedication, but it's also, there's shortcuts. And best shortcut is to get a coach. The coach will inevitably come with a data logging system, hopefully a VBox. But that's how you fast track it. And you start it can be overwhelming at first, but you just pick one corner and you pick the braking zone for one corner to begin with, and you can work on that. And with the data, your coach can say, you brake at the 100-meter mark, and you brake at the 100-meter mark, you sail past the corner, and you go, well, what am I doing wrong? And it's only through the data that you can actually work out how he manages to brake at the 100-meter point compared with you. And you're hitting the brakes too hard and locking the brakes, or you're not building the pressure up quickly enough, or you're just not maintaining it. And that 9 times out of 10, you're just not maintaining the pressure. Everyone panic brakes hard, but then they come off the brakes for some reason. It's just a human trait. And you can't really see that on the video. And you can't tell unless you're sat alongside somebody. So the only other way is through the data. So and then that follows around the corner as well. There's other phases of the blend as you go to the apex and all the other bits that through the data you can see those little subtleties that make all the difference.
I think you summed up really nicely, and it's kind of I suppose the way I look at it is the data gives you that certainty, because without it, I've often found myself in this kind of like, it could be this or it could be that, or where am I going to find 2 seconds?
Yeah, it can be daunting, can't it? You go, oh gosh,
I've driven around as hard as I can.
Yeah,
2 seconds off pole. Yeah, what are they doing? Yeah. And then you've got 2 choices. Then you either sort of look at yourself, your car, or you think they're cheating.
Yes, exactly.
This is, and you pick the order in which however happy you're feeling. Quite often it's the first 2 and not the last one. I'll be honest, it's not always, but
sometimes.
And you think, oh right, okay, and then so I've got the data in front of me. I look at these squiggly lines. Don't even know where to start. But then once you have a little bit, and if you can translate that into a plan for next time, that you can at least try, and making a huge step. But it's just like, I think we can break a little bit deeper into turn 1.
Yes,
you're braking here. The data says you can brake 100 meters later. For argument's sake, let's try 20 meters
exactly and
see if it makes any difference. To go around the corner. What I love actually using the VBox or video in general, is that with a driver, you can, it's quite hard to envisage what 100 meters later looks like, or
yes,
meters later looks like.
yeah,
So because you're typically, you may typically be braking at first in a straight line, you can kind of roll it forward by the distance and say, right, this is where you're braking at the moment. This is what life looks like. Point. I'm going to roll it forward, right? This is what life is going to look like when you start braking for the next one.
Yeah.
And then they've got, okay. And it doesn't always work. Like straight away, but at least you're sort of planting a seed and you're trying to...
you got that visual clue as when you should be braking. Yeah.
You've got the faith as well, because you have some competency to look at the numbers as well. You can say, no, honestly, it will stop.
It will, as long as you press it hard enough and consistently enough. Yeah,
it will stop. So anyway, I knew this would be great. Thank you so much for your time.
No problem. No, I love discussing this subject, and as you probably tell, as I said, we're not even at the apex yet.
Even at the apex. Well, maybe we'll come back another time. We'll talk about the rest of the quarter, because I just think it's lovely that you kind of putting your money where your mouth is with all this sort of stuff. And you're in, technical engineer or whatever, but you've been out there, you've put it into action, and you've gone, actually, I can appreciate that it is scary at times. And I know the numbers say, like, I can go around the corner quicker, but I need to pick up. And so you've worked on yourself and been able to do it. So it kind of proves that it can be done. Yeah,
and I can relate to my customers. I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, thank you. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you for inviting me.
Wow, what a privilege to have Julian on the show. I hope you found his story as interesting as I did, as well as picked up several tips on how to get more from your data system. His combination of racing experience and technical expertise truly reminds us of the significance of analytics in any field. Julian's journey from racer to innovator is testament to the power of passion and the potential of technology. As always, remember to stay curious, stay inspired, and keep pushing those boundaries. Thank you for listening. This is your host, Samir Abid, signing off until next time. You may know that at the end of season 1, I wrote the Motorsports Playbook, a summary distilling the first 20 shows into nuggets of wisdom. I made the notes so that you don't have to. If you've not got it yet, go and grab yourself a copy from the website. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and visit us at yourdatadriven.com.